Hello, hello, and welcome to the after party for Should I Wish Someone Told Me. We are going to be talking about people pleasing this week, and so Abigail is about to hop on, and we are going to be recapping the episode, talking about what you had to say in the polls this week. And hello, ma'am. Also answer some questions that y'all had. Y'all some good ass questions this week.
Yeah.
So thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Abigail's already here, so we are. Look at us with our time. I'm impressed. So, okay,
That's people pleasing, right? We got to be
that
on
is.
time so people like us.
Oh my God, you're amazing. Okay, so yeah, let's just go ahead and dive into it. Go ahead and if you would recap what we shared in episode 61 this week.
So much.
That
We
was a
had a
lot.
lot of different things to say because people pleasing is not just a simple topic of just saying yes, right? It's like
Right.
a learned behavior, it's an evolutionary response to keep us safe. Different genders get different messaging about, how to please others, or
Mm-hmm.
not. And so I feel like the quick summary is just like the different ways where it comes from,
Right.
then the ways it can show up in relationships and work, with friendships, and then ultimately, like, what do we do about it?
Right. Yeah, that's a very concise. I love it. I'm my 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 Aries. If anyone's into astrology, yeah, I love the concise. So thank you for that. Yeah, it was a great episode. It is a great episode, and um, we did talk about all those things and more, and give
Yeah,
some examples. And one of the things that usually happens when now that we're doing this new format where we have like a week dedicated to the topic is that I'll realize things, after I listen back to our episode and things will come up where I recognize, right, like your reticular activating system. Like if you talk about like wanting a red car, all of a sudden everywhere, or there's red cars everywhere. So in that sense, since we talked about people pleasing this week, first of all, did you have more of awareness of people pleasing? And if so, what can you share with everyone about like how it showed up for you this week?
yeah. So I am a recovering people pleaser.
Love.
Okay. I have definitely had an awareness of this through a lot of my life, but
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have necessarily the language. But I would just say, like, anytime I talk about any type of topic, it's definitely in the more like forefront of my mind, right? And so it just
Mm.
really came up in a lot of ways of like, well, even with you, when we were scheduled to do one day and I could not do it, right? I just
Mm-hmm.
like, I had a horrible night. Life was horrible. My mental health was trash, right? I was like, okay, if I go through with this, I am doing this to people please Johnna, right? And I was like, I need to let her know where I am right now and then see if we can problem solve this together rather than me compromising my well-being so she likes me. So she thinks I'm responsible. So she
Right.
doesn't think I'm a flake. And so it definitely comes up, but the other part that comes up with it is with the awareness now, I'm more like, okay, how do I move through this rather
Mm-hmm.
than like sitting in the suffering of, what do I do? What do I do? It's like, oh,
Right.
I'm people pleasing right now. Let's do something about it.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you. And what an applicable example we have. Oh, and Joe says that he says, "Oh,
Thank
nice, what an
you.
awesome shirt." Yeah, for anyone who is listening, Abigail's shirt says, "Hello, I'm a recovering people pleaser."
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that. So I always say awareness is the first step before we want to create real change because we can't change something that we're not aware of, and it's something where you know it's one thing to be going through the situation, like you said, like the people pleasing is happening, and not be able to step outside of that experience of the thing itself happening. And this goes with anything, people pleasing, or anything else you want to relate it to. But we're talking about people pleasing today. And it's something where it's a completely different experience when you step outside of it and recognize that you have the power to do something about it because now you know what's going on. It's like whenever a child is having a tantrum because they don't have the vocabulary to express what's going on. They just know that like something's fucked up or something's not right. And so their way of doing it is to pitch a fit, which some adults do.
Yeah.
Which can also look like shutting down. But it's whenever there's this discomfort inside, and it's something where it's one thing, yeah, to be kind of struggling with, I don't know what's going on and what do I do, versus having that awareness of, oh, this is what's happening. Let me look at my options. Like, same situation, two completely different experiences.
Yeah, but first of all, you're so on is like we are going to be running on unconscious patterns and habits until
Right.
we're aware of them, right?
Right.
And then once we have that awareness, we need to name it, right? And working with kids, we have the phrase name it to tame it. When you're feeling a strong emotion, but it could also be like a behavior like people pleasing. But when you're feeling something, once you name it, oh, I'm doing people pleasing right now, you can tame it. You have more control over that thing. When you're feeling super anxious, if you don't name it, the anxiety is going to change your behavior. But if you name anxiety, then you have more control over how you handle the anxiety, right?
Yes.
So it's like, it's exactly what you said. It's regardless of the situation, if you name it, you have more control and the ability to take more actions after that naming up, that awareness piece.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And I love name it to tame it. Like, I love that. And that's, yes. I'm definitely going to be putting that in my toolbox. But I think that, and that's one of the things that we spoke about in our episode as well, is that a lot of people, while yes, like we are in a time in society where like a lot of us know like people pleasing exists, but also where I think it gets mislabeled sometimes. And so we touched on that as well, because sometimes like, doing a favor for someone, that's not necessarily people pleasing. Like that could just be
right.
So we talk about the difference there as well. And, to our point with that, like in the polls this week, we asked people, are you or have you ever been a people pleaser? Right. And so 80% of people said yes. 20% of people said I'm in recovery. And so I think that on some level, that like all of us have done it, right? And what we spoke about in the episode is also, recognizing like when we do it, it's not whenever, like we said, we're doing a favor for someone. It's whenever you are sacrificing your needs for the needs of someone else. And so we didn't put that definition in the polls because I like to totally let y'all go in with these.
Yeah.
But the fact that 100% of people said that they had at some point or were in recovery, literally no one said no out of your polls, because Abigail posted them on hers as well. So out of yours and mine, no one said no. And so this is a topic that is true for everyone to some degree.
Yes, right. I mean, I thought when I saw that part of the poll, one, I was surprised. I was surprised that no one said no.
Yeah.
That was surprising to me. Like in my mind as a, recovering people pleaser, I didn't think that everyone was a people pleaser. And to, it just was surprising to me in that sense. But then the other part was like, it was like this wholehearted feeling of like, we can also relate to each other on that level. It might be different. Some of us might totally compromise our well-being and be burnt out and miserable with people pleasing. And some people might, be on the other side of like, saying yes once in a while and while they don't want to do it, right? Depending on the relationship with the person. But I just really liked that 100% of people can relate to some form of people pleasing.
Yeah. And we talk about that as well in the episode about how it's a spectrum, right? Like you touched on just there, like some people are completely just like putting themselves out, whereas others are kind of just doing it because they're like, okay, like I'm doing this to like keep the peace, which we ask people, why do you do it? And 25% of people, so we gave 4 answers or 4 options, and we got some responses on all of them. And so the majority, let's start there. The majority of people said to avoid conflict, right? So the majority of people said to avoid conflict. 25% said, I just want everyone to be happy. Another 25% said, I want to be liked. And 10% said, I don't freaking know. So this to me, so 40%, that's like the overwhelming majority. I think that when we're in that case, it's like, are you people pleasing or are you being strategic? Like,
Yeah.
because sometimes, like, if you know, again, if you have that awareness of like why I'm doing something, sometimes you doing that thing is you safeguarding your mental health. It is you doing things for yourself. It is you, keeping yourself safe. And, you're doing so like by avoiding conflict. But at the same time, I don't know personally, and I want to hear what you would think. I don't know if I would personally consider that people pleasing. What do you think?
I think it's a really, it depends, right? And I think it depends on the relationship with the other
Mm-hmm.
person. Is it your boss? Is it your friend? Right?
Mm,
And so I think that level of people pleasing plays into it, because like if it's our boss, we don't want to lose our job.
right.
If it's our friend, maybe we're just avoiding an argument. Maybe we're avoiding speaking up for ourselves. Maybe we're avoiding the conflict of having to assert ourselves when we've never asserted ourselves with our friends before.
Right. Developing communication skills.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think that if you're saying yes, like, I haven't had this recently, but I know many times where I was trying to protect my mental health more and my wellness and like well-being. And sometimes I would say no to my friends and they would like try to turn the no into a yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I could have just said yes to avoid conflict. But instead, I chose to either say a firm no, or I chose to say like, I'm really practicing setting boundaries. Why are you trying to push my boundaries? And so I think that sometimes avoiding conflict is not people pleasing. It's just like, I got to have my job. I got to, there's things I just have to do. And rather than, but then sometimes like when we gave the example in the podcast, if it's like, where should we go eat for brunch? And people want to go to a place I don't want to go to, and I just go there to avoid conflict, right? Like, I could speak up for myself in that moment. Like, I don't have to people please in that moment. Hey,
Right.
Athena. And so, so I think do you feel like you're compromising yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like you are avoiding, like, conflict that actually it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal if you say, actually, I prefer to eat somewhere else, right? It's not a big deal to say, actually, I don't like when you're questioning, my boundaries. That doesn't make me feel like we have a good relationship.
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah.
I think everything you said is great, per usual. But yeah, that's a good point about, why are you doing it? Like, who is it with? Because
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, like I think that sometimes as long as you feel confident, like, and good about your decision, then who gives a fuck what you really call it? Like, as long as it feels good to you. But also, I say that with the caveat of not lying to yourself to like keep yourself small and safe.
Yeah.
I say a lot of times the truth is what we believe it to be, but oftentimes we're lying to ourselves. And so, in that case, if it's a situation where you're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I don't really like that restaurant, but it's not a big deal. But actually, and to use the example I used in this week, if that place is a steakhouse and I'm vegan, then like that is a big deal. Like that means that I can't eat. That means that I'm sacrificing my needs, like my basic needs of like fucking food to what? Like so that y'all can go where you want. And so in that sense, like that's kind of like gaslighting yourself, right? Like it's not that big of a deal. We don't have to go there. And so if in that sense you try to tell yourself, well, I'm not doing it to avoid conflict. I'm just doing it because it's not that big of a deal. Like I'm aware of it. Then like just be mindful that you're not, lying to yourself in that sense, that you're not being dishonest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like we're going like layers deep here. Like this is something that is, easy to do because oftentimes we try to convince ourselves that the decisions that we make are the right ones because we always want to be right. And whatever, we have to do in order to make that happen, cognitive dissonance says like that is what we will do. We will, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's not true, we will tell ourselves, like we will make up some story to believe that, yes, we are right. And so all that's to say that whenever we are relating this to people pleasing, just be careful that you truly do have your best interest and that you are being honest with yourself and who you are. And that if you are, people pleasing to avoid conflict, then great. And at the same time, ask yourself why. Like, how was that serving you?
Right.
And just get really honest with yourself. Whether or not you ever have that conversation with the person, it's important that you know why you're doing what you're doing.
Right. And I would say most of the time, depending on the situation, but in terms of like where you eat and some of those more mundane people pleasing, like the conflict isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have the narrative in your mind, like, oh, I always do what my friends want, or oh, we're always doing what they want. They don't care what I want. Maybe you're just not speaking up.
Right.
Right. So it's like, yeah, if you notice like the narrative in your head of feeling like poor me, maybe you should investigate why you aren't speaking up and if it's really a big deal or not.
Yeah. That victim. Yeah. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So another question that we asked is, where do we tend to people please, right?
Yeah.
And the options were at work, with family, and romantic relationships, or all of the above. So 64% of people, not surprising, all of the above. At work, with family, and romantic relationships. The second runner-up was, well, you already know. I was going to say, guess, romantic relationships. And then the equal split was at work and with family with the last two. What do you have to say about that? Did that surprise you? Was that like made sense?
Yeah, I mean, it made sense to me. In my mind, I think that if you are a people pleaser, it's going to most likely show up in many places, but you might learn how to set better boundaries around certain things. Like, I have friends, and I am very fortunate that I don't really get sucked into people pleasing with my family, right? And my extended family. I have extended family where if they are doing things that are harmful that I don't like, I can set a firm boundary, block them, we're done, right? I don't have this, oh, but we're family, I need to make them happy even if they're, right? And so, anyway, so that's to say that I think that people pleasers might originally start like people pleasing everywhere, right? It's just like that's their go-to. Let me make other people happy. Let me avoid conflict. Let me do all these things. They're people pleasing family, relationships, dating, friends, work. And then they start to realize how it's draining and they start to like prioritize which are the ones that they can let go of, right? But so I guess like my thought is I would think that it's everything because I'm sure it shows up, sometimes with family, sometimes in relationships, sometimes at work, but like as all of the above versus most dominantly, in what was it? It was relationships, work, family after the all of the above.
Yeah, it was relationships and then family and work like equal.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that people pleasing is something that happens everywhere, but then we start to focus more on areas where we can set boundaries and areas where maybe it's still harder to do it, like with our family members.
I think that's a great consideration because I wasn't surprised at all of the above.
Right.
And I wasn't surprised that work was kind of below because I feel with the pandemic, we've all just kind of been like, fuck you, won't do what you tell me, like kind of work, like we can work from home and like really enforcing some boundaries there and like recognizing like with inflation, like getting paid our worth. So like the work, I wasn't surprised that people were more assertive there. I was surprised family wasn't higher, and especially like after what you said, it seems that, I mean, we learn relationships and people pleasing from a lot of areas, which we'll touch on here in just one second. But, our caregivers, usually our family, is where that starts. And so I was surprised that more people didn't say family, just because those are like those learned traits. But then again, also it could be that that's where they recognize there's a problem to begin with. And so they've set those boundaries. And so now, yeah, it's like over in other areas. So that would make sense too. But yeah, I was not surprised it was all of the above because, yeah, like you said, I think it's like how we do anything is how we do everything. And so it happens a little bit here, a little bit there. Yeah, so that wasn't surprising to me. But speaking about where does people pleasing come from, so we asked, where do you think the tendency to people please comes from? And we gave you 4 options. So childhood, gender expectations, evolutionary strategy, or something else. And then we asked for you to slide into my DMs with something else. So 70% said childhood, 10% said gender expectations, 20% said something else. Absolutely fucking zero said
that
evolutionary
was shocking.
strategy.
That was very surprising to me. Although, here's the thing.
Because that's some shit no one told us. That's some shit I wish someone told me.
Right. That's like as I was saying, that was really surprising. Another narrative was running in my brain, like, yeah, but 5 years ago you wouldn't have thought that either, or 10 years ago, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And so that part was surprising, that no one put that, even though it is, a tactic to keep us safe, from an evolutionary perspective, and in the like flight, freeze, fawn is people pleasing, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was really interesting to me. What about you?
Yeah. So this was kind of a trick question, y'all. I'm gonna be honest. It was really all of the above. Which, by the way, the people who responded something else said. The people who responded something else, for the most part, said all of the above. And someone else said all of the above, and that they think it's also a trauma and or stress response. Also, I mean, we can like couple that under, expectations, like gender expectations and childhood, and like our learned experiences. But like to put it out there and be more direct, yes, trauma and a stress response. And so I was surprised, because I mean, that's what we talk about a lot. We talk about the science of things and like how our brain works. I'm an evidence-based coach, and we talked about that in the episode as well. It's one of the first things you said is like, some shit you wish someone had told you about people pleasing is that it is an evolutionary strategy. And I was surprised that no one said that. I was not surprised that so many people said childhood, because I think a lot of us are aware of childhood trauma. It's a very hot topic right now. Kind of a buzzword, if you will. But I was surprised that no one said evolutionary strategy, because
I just lost you for a second.
Oh, all I said was yes, I was very surprised that no one said evolutionary strategy.
Yeah.
So let's touch on that. Do you mind explaining really quick, like, how it's an evolutionary strategy for anyone? And we talk about this more in the actual episode, but just like Cliff Notes version, explain like how it's an evolutionary strategy.
Yeah. So Cliff Notes version, just like I said, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right, which is kind of like faint response. There's another one I'm forgetting right now. But in that response, so anytime there's a threat, right, we're walking, this is a terrible example, but we're in the woods and a bear comes out, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to first see, okay, we're going to scan the environment and see, like, is there someone that can help us, right? We're going to look for social engagement, see if someone can help us. But no, there's no one there to help us with the bear. Then we're going to go into our second level of threat response, which is fight or flight. We're either going to try to beat up the bear and fight the bear, or we're going to run away, right? And if that doesn't work, then we might like freeze, faint, fawn, okay? And freeze is we just freeze. We like can't move, right? Mm-hmm. We're just frozen. Faint is kind of like, dissociation from our body, right? We might faint, and then the bear might think we're dead and go away. And then fawn is the one where it's people pleasing. So maybe we like give the bear meat. This is a terrible example. I said it at the beginning, right? But we're gonna people please. We're gonna fawn to keep ourselves safe in that moment. Maybe we don't want to give the bear the meat we just got, but we give it to them. And so then that shows up also in like school when we're kids, right? And we have like a test we have to take, right? And again, it goes to like first social engagement. Can someone help us? I'm feeling anxious, nervous. I feel like this test is a threat. Maybe we have a teacher, we're soothed, we're fine. But if that doesn't happen, then we might get jittery in our body. We might like start breaking pencils or like huffing and puffing, right? Or we might like have to go to the bathroom multiple times during that test, fight and flight. And if that doesn't help us when we're taking this test and we feel like this threat, then we might like go to the teacher and schmooze the teacher and bring an apple for the teacher and like, hey, can I have extra time on this test, right? And so that would be the people-pleasing fawn response in that case. Again, that's off the top of my head, and I feel like right after I'm done talking, I'm going to think there's better answers.
Okay, You can post them in the comments. But no, I thought that was a good example because so from like an evolutionary strategy, it is essentially us trying to appeal to others to ensure our chances of survival. So in the test example, it is us like trying to get the camaraderie of the teacher like on our side to improve our chances of, succeeding at this test,
Yes.
which, gets us a good grade, which means we get to a good college, which gets us a good job, which, back to basic needs means we could pay our rent and have a shelter over our head. And so that was, I think, a good example of how, and thank you for doing that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but a good example of how people pleasing can be like, and is an evolutionary strategy and what that looks like.
Yeah.
So,
and like,
yeah.
if like, all right, see, the bear was a terrible example. I'm already thinking of better examples, right? But if, back in the day of saber-toothed tigers, right, and we are with our group of people as we're walking around gathering food and looking for shelter, we piss off our group of people and they kick us out, then we are food for the saber-toothed tiger. But if we are liked, and if our people like us, and if, we bring all the berries and give them to all the really good fighters, and we're like, I'll take the night shift, you all sleep, right? Then our group of people are going to like us, they're going to keep us in the group, and then we're safe by being in the group.
Yeah, that was a good example.
Dan, I had to talk it all out to get to that part.
Redemption, that was good. So, okay. Let's go ahead and talk about some of these awesome questions that people had.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one was, what are some tips on sticking to your original stance? So for an example, when I say no, but I see that the other person didn't like that, I say yes. So what insight do you have as a recovering people pleaser for them?
Yeah. I mean, my first thought when hearing that is like, that other person's reaction is not about me, right? Like, I have to remember that. Like, them not liking me saying no has nothing to do with me. Okay? So that's like one thing that I have to really keep in mind. Like, I can't take their reaction personally. We all like take everything personally. But like, if I ask you a favor and you say no, that has nothing to do with me or you. That has to do with, okay, now I got to figure out some other way to get the thing done that I need done, right? Like, you saying no has nothing to do with me, and my reaction has nothing to do with you. So I feel like that's the first part. The other thing is that, like, by saying no to someone, you are giving them the opportunity to problem solve their own thing, right? Like, we can say, like, if someone's like, hey, I can't even think of an example right now, but can you do this thing for me, right? I need help. And you're like, no, I'm like totally at my wit's end. I have no more space to do other stuff, right? You're giving the person the opportunity to problem solve their own problem. They can do that, right? And I also think that when you stick to your stance and you say no, then you are also modeling what it is to set boundaries, which is something that has greatly lacked in our society. Especially all these people growing up, childhood was like the #1 reason they learned about people pleasing. We never learned about setting boundaries. This is like a new thing. This is a new thing, setting boundaries and like valuing yourself, right?
Sure.
And so when you say no, you are giving the gift of setting boundaries and modeling a new way of being. And you can let them know it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with me. Bless you.
Thank you.
And then the last thing I would say, because like those first things are more like, I think they're more challenging to do, like not take it personally and like think about giving them the opportunity for problem solving. But the last thing is like when you say no and they react, don't react back. Don't change your response. Give it space, right? Like that's the first thing. Let them have space to see what comes up for them. If they really, really need your help, they can ask again.
Right.
But also, you don't have to instantly change your response.
Right.
You can both sit with it. 30 minutes, an hour, a week, a month, however long, whatever the like favor is for, I think that that is really like the first part, is practicing pausing before changing your response. Mm-hmm. Give the other people an opportunity to figure something else out. And usually they do.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good. Thank you for sharing. I'm trying to think. So what would I say? So sticking to your original stance. So if I say that you see that they don't like it, I mean, not, so first of all, kind of like same thing that you said, like not your circus, not your monkeys. Like you can't be responsible for how they're going to react to something. And so that's, yeah, like you don't have to be the one to navigate that. If they then want to come back and say like, oh, well, I'm really disappointed, or, oh, like, then okay, that's a conversation. But there's no reason that you should, change your beliefs based on, their interpretation of your no. Right. And when it comes to sticking to the original stance, like I like what you said about just give it space, just give it time. Yeah. I also think that, something you could do is, I mean, obviously everything is circumstantial. Like it depends on the specific instance, but you can also offer alternatives. Like, no, I can't do this. I can help you figure out, or I can help you come up with some ideas. Like that's kind of like a soft no. Mm-hmm. So that way, like you're being an active participant, but it's something where you are still saying like, I cannot do this, or, but like someone else might be able to, or I know someone that can. And that can help you, especially as you ease in, because people are like, no is a complete sentence. True. At the same time, you can't go from telling someone yes all your life to then just say no. Because first of all, if you have been the kind of person who has in the past agreed to do these things, when you start to say no, that is shifting the dynamic of your relationship. And so there's, quotes and memes that people may have seen. I know I've seen them. You've probably seen them as well, where it's like, when people react a certain way to you setting boundaries, it's because they no longer they don't like that their access to you changed. And I'm like, that might be true. And also like, that's not necessarily their fault. Like if you condition them this one way and then you start telling them no. And so, I get it. Like you feel some responsibility for that. Like if you're the one who's been saying yes all along, and at the same time, there's no need that you can't change that relationship dynamic if that's not serving you anymore. Mm-hmm. And so that might also look like another conversation. It might look like, instead of just saying no, and then when you see that this person doesn't like it, instead of immediately flipping your answer and being like, okay, well actually, yeah, like I'll see what I can do, or I can turn it around, or like blah, blah, blah. You could say like, is there someone else that could help you with this?
Yeah.
Like, put it back on them, give them the responsibility, help them to get curious, because if they've just always been coming to you as their go-to, and then all of a sudden you present it with like, I don't have the availability for this, is there someone else? Then like, they just might not have ever thought about it. And so in that way, you're kind of like helping them. Is that more emotional labor for you? Not really. Like you're just asking them a question, but having like some go-tos to go to in that way, so that when people come to you, because again, like I don't know the specifics of this, but thinking about like what types of things, because again, like the awareness, like what kinds of things people are asking you for, so that you can start to get better with your responses. And so that will help you stick to that original stance. And remembering your why, like why you can't do it, remembering your rights. You have a right to not be everyone to everything, and, to do what is best for you. And so remembering that, like, as you were saying no, because they don't have a right to just use you as their personal assistant or whatever the case may be. And so remembering that you have a right to, safeguard your own mental health. And I had a question for you to follow up on that, because you mentioned that your friends would try to turn your no into a yes. And so how did you navigate it in that way?
Yeah, great question. I want to say one thing based on what you said, and then I'm going to answer it. Mm-hmm. I like how you also said, like, you can turn it into a conversation. When you say no and you see them not liking that response, like you said, like you offer them tips, like, hey, maybe you could ask this person, right? Or maybe you could do this. Also, you could just be curious, like, hey, I just said no, and I saw you negatively react to that. I saw you didn't like that. Can we talk about this?
Or, whenever you started to say that, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's good as well. But, yeah, like, it seems that don't tell someone what you saw from them. Like, ask them, like, so it seems to me that you didn't like that response, or it seems to me that that response upset you. Like, would you say that's true? Like, you know, how are you feeling right now is like a good way. So yeah, I love that. So
Right.
yeah,
Just being curious and reflecting back what you see, and then you get some common understanding there.
right.
Okay, wait, what was your question now?
So whenever your friends would try to turn your no into a
Oh,
yes.
yeah. So with friends, with good friends, right? With supportive, loving, like friends, I was able to tell them like, hey, I'm really practicing boundary setting. I'm really practicing not spreading myself too thin. And so there's going to be times where I'm kind of changing. I'm kind of doing things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask for your support. Because the thing is that change is uncomfortable, right? If your friend you know one way and they start acting differently, it can bring up a lot in yourself. Like, wait, are we not going to be friends anymore? You know, why can't I change? What's wrong with me? Right? Like we could go down the rabbit hole of that. And so with my friends, I just had the communication ahead of time. I'm not going to be going out as much. I'm not going to, you know, and it doesn't mean I love you any less. It just means that I need to start prioritizing self-care for myself. And so that is like how I set the boundary. And then when they would like say like, let's go out. And I'd be like, no. And then they'd be like, come on. You know, I'd say, hey, remember, I'm asking for your support.
I love that. Yeah, that's something we also talked about. Like start small and yeah, like recruit people who are going to have your best interest. And so, yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Like that's a good to, I think anyone who's looking to, you know, stop with the people pleasing so that they can preemptively like, hey, heads up, like I'm working on this thing and list your friends in doing it. Like, hey, this is how you can support me with this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So thank you. Another question we had, how do you go about accepting rejection from someone or several folks when you choose to stop people pleasing?
Do you want to take this one first or you want me to?
I can go first. You went the other first. I'll go with this one first. So I think that this is similar to the other question.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, it seems that there's like straight up rejection. And so my insight here is to first of all remind them that it's not you, it's them, kind of like how you responded to the initial your initial response to the first question. Mm-hmm. And when people do this and when we take it back to again like primal level, what's happening is if your relationship has been one way and then suddenly you start to tell people no, then they can perceive that as a threat. So they can perceive that as, you know, the community that they knew of like you and them and that relationship no longer being a thing, which is, you know, breaking up that, you know, that need for love and belonging that we get through a sense of community. And so it can very much be something where they start to feel fearful because of that. And fear isn't an acceptable emotion, which we're going to be talking about in an upcoming episode later this month, the acceptable emotions. I put acceptable marks. And so instead of saying, hey, you know, is our relationship changing? Like I feel, you know, like a bit fearful. I feel a bit rejected. I feel a bit abandoned, whatever, you know, might be true and like hiding underneath there. Instead, they start to pick at you. Oh, you can't, you know, go drink with us because you've got to go like work out. Like you're some like big shot, like worker, or, like fitness person now. Or, you know, they get mad about it. Like, oh, well, you can't come hang out with us like you could the other day. You're too good now. And so they start to mask this actual hurt and abandonment and these feelings. And also I think that so many of us are fearful of looking like anxiously attached or, you know, some other type of, you know, diagnosis that we have been, you know, viewed as like a bad thing, when I encourage everyone to remove the charge from whatever label you may have or, you know, be thinking of having or may have in the future, whether it be people pleasing or attachment styles or anything else. Remove the negative or positive and just look at it for what it is, because it gives you a lot of power. And that's just like a sidebar, main bar. But when it comes to, yeah, how do you go about accepting the rejection from someone? So if they start to push you away, then just give them space. I think just give them space, because it could just be that they need some time to like air it out. Like, oh, like our relationship's changing. Like you said, people hate change. Like they just might need some time to kind of sit with that. If it's something where they actually like stop talking to you, then that's a conversation. Like, hey, I noticed when I started doing this that, you know, it seems that this started to happen. Like, can we talk about that?
Right.
and, you know, actually sit down and start to get to the root of it. If it's something where the people that rejected you, like, you want to actually have a relationship with them. But yeah, I think that I think that's a pretty comprehensive view. Like, remember, it's not you. So summary, remember, it's not you. And, you know, give them some time to just kind of like air out the wound, give it a little bit of space. And then if it's something where they continue to just, you know, push away, then you can have a conversation about it and take it from there to see if, you know, because it could be as well, like, they might think that that's what you want. If you tell them, like, hey, you know, this is changing, it could be that they think that, like, this is what the new relationship dynamic is going to be. And so it could just be that there's a misunderstanding with that. So yeah,
Yeah.
communication goes a long way.
That's it. I mean, it's communication. Communicate. I feel the same way. So how do we accept rejection is the question when, like, we say no and they reject, like, that we're changing.
How do you go about accepting rejection from someone or several folks when you choose to stop people pleasing?
Yeah. So I think, you know, I mean, one, it's communicating. It's communicating your new boundaries, right? And giving space for people to ask questions for understanding, right? Like, all this communication can even, like, be a preventative, so you're not getting rejected and they're not feeling rejected.
Right.
Because if you're stopping people pleasing and you're changing, the other person might have fear and rejection, feel rejection, like you were just saying, right? But I also think that context really matters in this. Is the fear of rejection from, like, your parents who you, like, love and adore and you don't want to feel rejected by your parents, right? Is this from your friends? Is this from some brand new person that you're dating?
Right.
And so I can just speak from experience, like, when I was in the dating world, and I found someone that I thought I liked, right? I used to, like, jump through hoops, people pleasing, whatever they said. I'd say, how high do you want me to jump? How far, you know? And
what kind of shoes do you want me to wear?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, where do you want to go? I don't care where we eat. What do you want to do? Right. And when I started to change my people pleasing in dating, in work, in all these areas, I definitely would get, like, the feelings of rejection, especially from, like, new dating people. Right. So I took it really personally. Like, if I was dating someone for 3 months and then they started to reject the new version of me, right, I took it personally, like it was me. It was extremely uncomfortable. And so for me, part of the way to start to accept the feelings that I'm being rejected is to understand the physiological response of rejection. Right. That helped me. That helped me have more compassion, because, like, my mind is racing. I want to fix it. I want to connect back to that person so I feel safe, right? It feels so restless and jittery in my body that I don't even want to be in my body, right? Like, but this is all a physiological reaction to the fear of rejection. And when I could actually understand that piece of it, I could companion myself more during those moments and be more accepting of the rejection. And then the last thing I'll say is that, like, especially if it's, like, new people and they don't like my boundaries, they're not my people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's information for me. Even if there's, like, I had a very long-term friendship with someone. We were friends since 2nd grade, right? And it wasn't until our 30s where I started to make changes and speak up in our friendship rather than just go along with her. We're not friends anymore. Yeah. We grew apart, and, like, it was painful at some point, and now it's not, right? And so in some way we rejected each other and we both had to heal from that. But rejection is a part of life. Yeah. That is it. So we have to learn how to be more comfortable with rejection, and how do we show up for ourselves, or how do we ask for support from people that we trust and feel safe with when we're feeling rejected.
Yeah. This is a little wooey, but it's a reframe. And I do think that it can be a powerful one, because I love what you said about recognize what the physiological sensations are in your body when that rejection is coming up. And so, like you said, that person's not for you. So that reminded me of, like, reframing rejection as, like, a redirection. And how, it's not someone's, like, shutting you down, like, fuck it, we're all figuring out life. Like, it's all just R&D. And so instead of looking at it as like being rejected by that person, look at it as like, okay, well, it's time to go this way now. If you're trying to go, this is a relevant example. If you're trying to go see your favorite band, if you're trying to go see Rage Against the Machine play in concert and you run into a roadblock, you're not going to be like, oh, rejection, like I can't go that way. I'm going to find another way. And so I'm going to redirect. And so in that way, yeah, I think that it can be something where we can, and again, like you said, like, is this your parents? Because that's different.
Right.
Versus like, you know, someone that you work with that you thought was pretty cool for a couple months.
Yeah.
Like, totally different situations. And so, yeah, it depends. But yeah, just instead of looking at it like, you know.
And I mean, I really like what you're saying. I like what you're saying about like the redirection, right? Because in that, it doesn't mean it's not painful. Rejection is painful. Right. When you start saying no, and then like maybe you're not getting as much work opportunity, right? Or your friends don't ask to hang out with you as much, that's pain. That's painful. But it does direct you into another path of becoming who you want to be, right? So it's like, it's not like just accept rejection, right? And go on living your life. It's like, no, that it is painful. It is uncomfortable. A lot comes up in rejection, right? And it is redirecting you to this new possibility, whatever it might be.
Yeah. That reminded me, energy is neither created nor destroyed. And so it reminded me about how, like, I mean, so much great art was created from like rejection and like heartbreak in that sense. And so, like, No Doubt, Don't Speak, like, their #1 hit, like. So yeah, it's taking the energy that was invested in them and that experience, and instead of trying to figure out, well, what can I do better, how can I people please my way back into it, and thinking about how can you please yourself right now, like, what things do you need, like, what can you do elsewhere with that energy that you have, that you want to invest in them, that you can invest in them, that you're willing to, and you're ready, you're just like, why don't you love me? Take that and put it somewhere where it's going to be compounded instead of just like sitting there with like no interest.
Yeah.
Literally no interest. No financial interest, no emotional interest. Like, I feel like I'm talking to myself right now. So yeah. Okay, good questions. We went in on these. I hope that they provided some support for anyone and everyone who asked, and also for people who are just listening and watching, because I think that these are all questions that I read them and I'm like, yeah, like I this is familiar. So yeah, I hope that that was helpful for everyone. I do want to touch on, before we wrap up, we asked everyone, as we do every week, what is some shit you wish someone told you about people pleasing? And so I want to go over some of the results because they were awesome. So first of all, you got to do the shit that makes yourself happy too. Yes. If you love yourself first, the acts of kindness are even better. Yes. You can be selfish at times. It's okay. Yes. Some people cannot be pleased. Also true. That makes me laugh. Your choices and decisions are valuable too. Yes. That saying yes to others in spite of your own desires will only hurt you in the long run. There's a fine line between being a pushover and being flexible. That goes back to that discernment, like we were saying, like, know your why when it comes to like living in conversation. And then people pleaser plus a narcissist equals disaster, which is true. Do you have any thoughts on those? I thought those were all great. I think that they're great every week, but yeah, like, I thought those were all great.
Nailed it. Like, totally. I loved all of it.
Cool. So now let's do a little rapid fire-ish questions to get to know you a little bit better.
Oh, no. What?
Yeah. And then we'll wrap it up. It'll be fun. All right. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I guess so.
Okay. What is a life hack you wish you knew sooner?
Oh, man. I guess, like, there's like 8 million ideas flooding my mind right now. But I guess the very first one that came to mind is that a slow exhale really helps me in moments of overwhelm and getting clarity.
That's good.
So it's an in the moment life hack practice.
I love that. That, I would say name it to tame it. But yeah, that's a good one. Okay, cool. What's an awesome book that you wish someone had told you about? So
Ooh. I mean, I recently fell in love with all of Frederick Bachman.
that is
So he wrote the book Anxious People. It took a while to get into it. It took me like 50 pages. I was like, because a friend recommended that. And I was like, and then it clicked and I was like, oh my gosh. And then
okay.
I read every other book of his. So he's fiction. So if we're talking fiction, like I really enjoy his stuff.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, fiction, nonfiction, any book.
Nonfiction, I'd go Bruce Perry. Anything by Bruce Perry. Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. What's the other one? What Happened to You?
Oh, that one. Yeah, I haven't read it yet. I have it there.
Those all help with a lot of self-compassion and understanding yourself and human beings in general.
It's in my list. What Happened to You is in my list because another guest that's going to be on episode 64, Why You Can't Get Over Them. Yeah, he, whenever we did episode, I believe 18, he was like talking about it a lot. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I ended up getting it, but I have not read it yet. But I didn't get it until recently, so it wasn't like I got it months ago.
If you're like me, I have a stack. I have to stop myself from buying more books so I can read the ones I currently have.
I have set that boundary with myself.
Yeah.
Honest, I don't always honor it. That's one of those, it's a porous boundary. I'm like, it's fine. I really want this one. But yeah, okay. So name a feel-good go-to thing that everyone needs to know.
A feel-good go-to thing. Okay. I love somatic holds. Where you just place your hands on your heart and you connect to your heartbeat or you connect to your breath. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel calm. Anytime I'm feeling anxiety, not anytime, but a lot of times when I'm feeling anxiety and I remember to do this, it is like an instant feel good. It can, lead to more oxytocin in your body. It can make you feel good. So that is one of my go-to feel good things.
I love that.
But there's so many more, right? Gummy bears, like.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I don't like gummy bears, but yeah, I thought that was great. Okay, what do you wish all clients knew before working with you?
Oh God, what do I wish all clients knew before working with me? I mean, I feel like this could go so many different ways, but I'm not into bullshit. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I'm not gonna blow smoke up your ass. I'm a really good listener. And when people talk, I can usually hear threads to their stories that they haven't noticed before. And I'm going to call it out. I mean, I'm going to do it super loving and curious because I feel honored to hear stories.
Very gentle. I can attest to this.
Wait, what'd you say?
Very gentle. I can attest to this.
Yeah, very gentle. But also like curious and call it out, right? Like I'm not for people gaslighting themselves, right? If they're seeking to work with me, then I want real work to be done. But also the other part of it is it's small steps, right? Like if someone is constantly overwhelmed in their house and all the things they have to do, they're going to set a timer 5 minutes for once a week to begin with to take one corner to declutter, right? It's like, I don't promise these big life-changing things. I help people really get very small habits of mind, of space, of body, of emotions, and make the changes in very small step-by-steps.
Right. I love that. Okay, cool. Last 2 questions. This is a fun one. I think they're all fun. But what is something that in your life today you get really excited about? Abigail today is like, oh my God, I love this thing, cannot live without it. But younger Abigail would be like, oh my God, shaking my damn head, this is embarrassing.
Oh no, what do I get excited about that
Do you need an example?
Me would not be excited about?
Do you need an example? So like for me, it's non-stick cookware. But like not like the Teflon bullshit, like legit, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty exciting. I would agree with that. Yeah.
But younger Johnna would have just been like, what?
Right. No, that is a great example. What do I get? Oh, okay. Headbands. I have a headband problem. I have a headband problem. I got introduced to the headband lady. She is amazing. She's Busy Bee Crafts. And I got introduced to her a little over a year ago, and I buy too many headbands and I get super, super excited about them. But younger me would not have cared at all.
That's hilarious. That might have been, so like the other things people have said has been like insoles. Like shoe insoles that people said. So, but yeah, headbands. I could see my younger self getting excited about headbands, but
yeah, younger self was not into those things at all. Like they actually didn't feel good on my head.
Oh, right.
You know, it was like a sensory thing, and now I'm obsessed.
Okay, and you gave her a shout out. So
I did. I love her. I carry around her card, and anytime someone compliments me on a headband, I give her her card.
That's amazing. Wow. You should be my marketer as well. Okay, last thing. If you could tell everyone just one thing that is some shit you wish someone told you, what would it be?
No one knows what they're doing.
Okay, that's a good one. That was fast.
I mean, I could have thought more and tried to do something more like, you know, intelligent and creative and inspiring, right? But we're all faking it.
Yeah, okay. I love that. Well, thank you, ma'am. So
that was fun.
Right? It's like I thought these were fun. So where can they find you? What do you have going on?
Let's see. You right now can find me on Instagram, Abigail_the mindfulness practice, but I might be taking a break from Instagram because that doesn't help my mental health. I do too much people pleasing. I people please Instagram and they don't give anything back to me, right? It's a one-sided toxic relationship. So I'm on it for now. I might pop on and off. I haven't figured out my boundaries around it yet. So right now you can find me there. You can find me on my website, abigailwilber.com. You can find me on Insight Timer. I create practices for kids and adults.
You got some free ones on there?
I got at least 10 free ones, and then I have 2 courses, and the courses are for bedtime meditation for kids and a life skills course for teens, and those are included if you have the Insight Timer membership. And can't think of what else is going on. Oh, and I do co-host Anxiety Warriors podcast with my buddy Margot. We talk about all things anxiety, a little bit of ADHD and mental health overall, and we have a lot of fun over there. Johnna's been a guest. And yeah, I think those are the things that are popping up in my mind right now.
Okay, cool. And I will be sure to link everything in the description so you can just tap on over if you're not already following Abigail and do so and get the rest of her info before she bounces off of IG. Because yeah, I feel there's about to be like a mass exodus of that. But yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Something we spoke about throughout this conversation, one of the threads that we kept speaking to is, you know, when it comes to people pleasing, one of the ways that you can really, you know, to answer one of the questions, you know, stand strong in your response and be okay with people rejecting you, is to also, you know who you are and have a solid sense of yourself. And that really comes from, you know, doing self-discovery and like taking the time to like do the work. And so oftentimes with all of the narrative and all of the information about, you know, people pleasing, or excuse me, about self-help, it's something where it's overwhelming and we try it for a while, but then that thing doesn't work. And so then we're like, well, this self-help doesn't help me. And so if that is you, then I created something for you. And it is a series to help you with a workbook explain why the self-help has not helped and what to do instead. And so if you're interested, you can tap to the link in my bio, or you can just go to whenselfhelpisn'thelping.com and learn more about it there. And I highly suggest that you do. So next week on Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, we are going to be having an episode with Mr. Josh Brentnell, anxiety coach. And our conversation is going to be, are you addicted to a past version of yourself? So we're going to be looking at a lot of self-sabotage types of things. And like when we get stuck, we're going to explain the science behind like why we are in these patterns. And so it's going to be a good conversation. So that's going to be live on wherever, on all podcasting platforms on Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, and also on YouTube. So make sure to check that out. And as always, we will be posting polls on Wednesday to hear about your experience, results on Thursday, and we will be back here on Friday to talk about what you had to say and recap the episode and answer any and all of your questions. Which reminds me, I totally skipped a question that I want to make sure I hit because, like, my bad. Like, let me not be an a-hole. So one question that I skipped over here, my total apologies, is do people who witness these acts ever feel like or realize that they're taking advantage? So do the people pleasers, do they ever, yeah, that's a good one. My apologies. Bonus.
You rejected that because you wanted to make them feel bad, right?
No, I'm working on my reading comprehension skills.
Right. I mean, that was a joke because there's nothing to do with that.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, do people who witness these acts ever feel like or realize they're taking advantage? What do you think? Or do you want me to go?
I think it really depends a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. I ask people for favors and things, and my intention isn't to take advantage of them, but I don't know if they're people pleasing me or not. I only know if they either one say no or say, I have a lot on my plate, I want to help, but I can't. Right? Or I'm trying to recover from people pleasing. Please don't ask me these. So when I'm asking people stuff, I'm not doing it with the intention to take advantage. Right? And the only way I can know if they're thinking it's me taking advantage is by them communicating.
Yeah.
So that's my first thought, right? Then my second thought is there are some people that are just accustomed to having yes men all around them, right? And so when they hear no, it makes them super, super uncomfortable. And so they actually might be trying to see, you know, who's going to say yes so that they can always have yes men in their corner, right? And so in a sense, then, like, yeah, whether they're conscious or unconscious that they're taking advantage, they're looking for people who won't push back, right? And so I think it depends. But I think the first thing is, if you're not communicating your needs, if you're not communicating what's right for you, then they don't know if they're taking advantage of you or not, right? If you're not setting the boundaries, they don't know, right? But then the other thing is, like, yeah, be on the lookout for people who seem to have no problem taking advantage of people, right? I think we all understand, like, what's asking a lot and what's a small ask. Because from my perspective, you know, the answer is always no unless you ask. Right? So for me, if I want something done, I'm going to ask, but it doesn't mean I'm using the person or taking advantage of them, because that person has their own, you know, ability to say no or whatever they're working on to respond.
They have their own autonomy.
That's the word I was saying. Or agency. Yeah. Autonomy, agency. Yeah. Yeah.
So I love those responses. And I mean, same. So do they ever realize it? I think that, you know, if I'm accustomed to going to Abigail to help me out with my TPS reports, let's take it back to Office Space, right? So if I'm accustomed to, you know, just going to her, she's the one that does them because she's just always done them, then I don't know that she hates that. Right. I don't know, you know, and so exactly like what you said, it's something where, you know, and we touched on this earlier, people are conditioned, you know, we create these relationship dynamics with people, and if it's always been one way and suddenly it's another way, then that could, you know, cause some of the concerns that people had in the other questions, like rejection and, like, you know, they don't like that response or they seem like they don't like that response. But does that person continuing to ask recognize they're taking advantage? Not necessarily, because yeah, if it's something that you just always done, in my head I just might be like, that's just what she does, like she's just the one that does the TPS reports, not knowing that actually it's supposed to be Sam that does the TPS reports, right? Like, I might not know that if I, like, came into the office, like, later. And so I think that, like you said, like, yes, it depends, but that's, like, one way of looking at it. And, you know, when it comes to, like you said, and I love that you brought this up, like, some people, whether consciously or subconsciously, they are surrounding themselves, like, birds of a feather, right? So they're surrounding themselves with people that they know will always tell them yes, because that's going to make them feel in control. And so it's something where time will tell, but the fact that you have the awareness and the fact that you are, present to what people pleasing is, you can start to observe themes. Like if someone asks you for a favor once, cool. If they start asking you for that same favor every Friday, that's a theme. That's a pattern. That's a consistent behavior. And so that's when it's like, okay, is this person, doing this to take advantage of me, or is this person doing this because they don't know how to do it? They think that I like doing it. Like what's going on? But yeah, if it's like a one-time thing, might not necessarily, really be where they might even explain like, oh, I've got to like go to my kid's soccer game or some shit. And so, but you like understand it that way. So yeah, I think, like you said, depends, but it's something where the fact that you have the awareness, like you questioner and like you listening and watching have the awareness that now you are empowered to start to get curious and to start to observe and to notice and to not exist in that just being taken advantage of, but to step outside of it and start to recognize like, hey, what's going on here? And is this people pleasing? And if it is, like you said, to say something about it.
Yeah. I mean, like the thing is, this is like, we don't know how full someone's cup is every single day, right? Like one day I might be walking with a full cup of nourishing water, right? So I can keep giving out to all these other people and I still feel okay. And another day I might just have like a couple drips in there, right? And so like this analogy is applying to the fact that like we just don't know what people are walking with, and we can just by communicating have more understanding, right? Like just because someone asks for my water, they don't know how much I have left doesn't mean they're taking advantage of me. Right. They might not know where I'm at that day.
They can't see in your cup.
Wait, what'd you say?
They can't see in your cup.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so my analogies get better when I actually sit and think of them and don't come up with them in the moment. But
no. That was a good one. Okay. Well, I think that's it. For sticking around for the circle back. My apologies for missing that question. But yeah, I hope it was valuable. And I hope you all have a great weekend. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you want to talk more about people pleasing, mine and Abigail's DMs are open. Just slide on in. And all right, that's it.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye.